the Congress, the American people, and indeed the world stand united in their support for your actions. Our cause is just. Now you must be the thunder and lightning of Desert Storm. May God be with you, your loved ones at home, and our country. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for you at this time. Mike?
At a later time. Ladies and gentlemen, the statement that you've just read, we're having copies made of it now, and in just a little bit we'll have those copies available for you at the back of the room. Thank you very much for being here for this statement.
You've been watching a U.S. military briefing taking place live in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The spokesman there reiterating what the president has said about this attack on the Iraqi targets. Apparently they're not taking any questions from reporters, but we will be continuing to bring you all the details that we have from the situation in the Gulf. An overwhelming majority of the U.S. public supports the president's action in the Persian Gulf War. A CNN Gallup poll was done immediately following the president's address last night. That poll shows that 84% of the respondents either saw or heard the address. 86% were satisfied with the president's explanation. Only 10% were not. 81% of those surveyed say they approve of the way President Bush is handling the Persian Gulf War. 12% say they disapprove, and 7% do not know. 79% approve of the decision to go to war. 15% do not, and 6% say they do not know. As far as how long the fighting will go on, the majority, 39%, think battle will be over in a matter of weeks. 23% think it will continue for several months. And only 5% believe the fighting could go on for a year or more.
Stay with us. Our complete coverage of Operation Desert Storm continues.
No one can guarantee you a perfect world. A world where the unexpected never intrudes. But some of us know we'll be taken care of quickly and compassionately. In an imperfect world, you're in good hands with Allstate, a member of the Sears Financial Network.
These days, there are more pain relievers than ever. But last year, more people switched to Tylenol gel caps than any other. Why should you switch? All the extra strength pain relief of gel caps has been concentrated, then covered by a smooth gelatin coating, which makes them so easy to swallow. Extra strength Tylenol gel caps. Concentrated, powerful, easy to swallow. Join the switch to Tylenol gel caps.
Okay, so I paid a little more to stay in this motel. But hey, it's got this lovely pool.
Why pay for a pool you can't use? Next time, hit the roof. Red Roof Inns.
You know, my mom says you can get a really bad burn on a day like this.
Right now, for every night you stay at a Red Roof Inn, we'll give you something very special to drive away with when you check out. A brand new Lincoln. Get $5 cash back for every night you stay through February 2nd.
The war in the Gulf. CNN is the network with the most complete coverage, from the inner sanctum of the Oval Office to strategic planning in the Pentagon, the banks of the Nile in Cairo, to the chambers of the Security Council, from the front lines of the Saudi desert to the streets of Baghdad, a city under siege. Latest developments in Israel and a Jordan caught in the middle. Now, more than ever, shouldn't you be watching the network viewers voted best in coverage of the crisis in the Gulf? CNN.
As we have been reporting throughout the morning, the war in the Gulf is having a tremendous impact on world financial markets, and Stuart Varney is keeping tabs on the current impact. Stuart?
Well, quite simply, Rick, we have the world's financial markets exploding today. That's on optimism about the multinational offensive to liberate Kuwait. Crude oil, the dollar, gold prices, all of them plummeting. International stocks and U.S. Treasury bonds soaring. Word is, U.S. financial markets will open on time, and when they do, stocks are expected to rise sharply. We'll have more on that in a minute. First, the other market action, starting with European exchanges. Investors in London and on the continent going on a buying binge on hopes that the war with Iraq will be short. At the moment in Frankfurt, the DAX index is up a very strong 7.5%. In Paris, the CAC 40 index is up 7% even. As for London, the FT 100 share index at this point shows a gain of 55 points. It has reached 2110. Oil prices trading in London at their lowest level since before the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. Reports that the U.S. and its allies control the skies over the Gulf, lessening fears of supply disruptions. At the moment, a barrel of Britain's North Sea crude is down $7.70, all the way back to $21.30 a barrel. Developments in the Gulf are now hurting two traditional safe haven investments, gold and the dollar. At the moment, the price of gold is down $23. It's back to $380 an ounce. And the U.S. currency is sharply lower all across the board. The dollar's down almost 3 yen. It's down almost 3 pfennigs against the German mark and down more than 1.5 cents against the British pound. Now, quickly, the credit markets. The Treasury's 30-year bellwether bond up 2 14/32, and that's pushed the yield all the way back to 8.18%. Overnight in Tokyo, stock prices dipped at the opening bell, but then came storming back. The Nikkei average posted its 10th biggest gain ever, up more than 1,000 points. That's about 4.5%. It closed well above that 23,000 level. Explosive rallies for stocks in Europe and Asia today, and traders of U.S. stocks in London expect a similar trend when Wall Street opens in less than 2 hours. Joining us on our newsline with details is Mike Benson. He's the chief trader of U.S. stocks in London for Lehman Brothers International. Mike, we've heard reports that European investors are buying U.S. stocks very heavily. Is that still accurate?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it seems to be fueling itself here midday. Most U.S. shares started up a point to a point and a half, but now by midday we're seeing things up as much as 3 points like IBM. Some of your other blue chips like GE up 2 points plus. So demand seems to be feeding on itself rather than subsiding.
What would be your forecast for the opening of the Dow Jones average in New York?
I would have guesstimated 50 points, but that might be on the low side, 50, because that's where the collars check in. I don't think Wall Street will look back today. Up 50 is the start, and could be up as much as 75 to 80 points by the end of the day.
All right, that's Mike Benson from Lehman Brothers in London. Thanks for joining us, Mike. And that is the latest in business. I'm Stuart Varney at the CNN Business News Desk in New York.
All right, thanks, Stuart. That's going to wrap it up for our coverage for this morning. Coming up in about a half hour here on CNN, a live interview with a member of the PLO Executive Committee from Amman, Jordan.
Also to come, live coverage of a statement to be broadcast on Iraqi television. Stay with CNN for complete coverage of war in the Gulf.
This incredible stereo component system can be yours free from U.S. News and World Report. That's right, a free stereo. In a moment, you'll find out more.
Movie stars on the cover of Time. Cartoons on the cover of Newsweek. At U.S. News and World Report, how to build your fortune. Entertainment news or news you can use? Which is important? Let's hear what some readers have to say.
It compared a few different approaches to investing and let me choose.
And I picked out a few things in finance, and I think I've made some right financial moves as a result of it.
Best jobs for the future.
If we make a move, should we rent? Should we buy? Should we stay where we are? Should we try to improve the place?
Those kind of things are important to me right now in my life.
I say U.S. News gives you an insight into what might be tomorrow.
If you call right now, you'll receive this exclusive stereo component system absolutely free. This custom-engineered audio system features twin dynamic speakers for pure stereo sound, precision AM/FM radio tuner, and an LCD quartz alarm clock with snooze bar. And it's yours free with your paid subscription.
A stereo sounds fantastic.
Call now, and you'll also get great savings, over 60% off the cover price. You'll get 36 weekly issues, including exclusive annual guides like these. Pay in just 4 easy installments of $6.89, or use your credit card.
That is big savings.
Take it home, drive it around the block, kick the tires, and if you don't like it, send it back to us and we'll give you your money back.
A great magazine, great savings, annual guides, a money-back guarantee, and the stereo is yours free.
That's a very good deal. It makes perfect sense to subscribe.
I take the subscription and the stereo.
So pick up the phone and call right now.
Call now, 1-800-445-4800.
This is CNN.
CNN's continuing coverage of the Persian Gulf War underway once again. We're going to rejoin the CNN crew in Baghdad now. CNN correspondent Peter Arnett, where we understand there is renewed activity. Peter?
Well, there was a renewed siren. There was a huge roar just at 4 o'clock our time here, just 2 minutes ago, sending people scurrying in this giddy environment. But it has not been followed by any air attack. It's only the second time a siren has sounded in the city since the first raids this morning. And it seems to me they may be just testing their alert equipment. Now, President Saddam Hussein is vowing to fight on against this multinational allied bombing attack and possibly ground invasion. Iraq Radio has announced that everyone up to the age of 34 will be called up for military duty. Iraq government and strategic installations and command and control installations have taken a terrific pounding in Baghdad all day today. And if the action here is above Baghdad is any indication of what's happening elsewhere in the country, then Saddam Hussein's military machine must be under tremendous pressure. We can confirm here that the defense ministry is pretty much being destroyed. It looks as though it took 3 hits, one wing burned to the ground, one wing demolished, another tottering. The Socialist Ba'ath Party headquarters, Saddam Hussein's party, was hit with a bomb. A major oil refinery in the island in the Tigris River has been destroyed. A chemical plant in the city's north is burning, and a telecommunications center has been hit. But I would like to point out that Baghdad is not a city in ruins, far from it. This is a modern city. It has a very attractive skyline. That is standing. Outside our hotel window vantage point, car traffic is busy. People are walking along the sidewalks. They did scurry away when the alert did sound. But the bombing here seems to have been pretty surgical, as the Pentagon as the Pentagon suggested, said it would be. We've asked officials about civilian casualties. We haven't been told of any so far. Bob?
Peter, you say this latest air raid siren was apparently not accompanied by any attack. When was the last Allied assault on the city?
The last Allied attack about 2 hours ago. It was in the outskirts, about 10 miles from the center of town where we are, or the area where we are. After that bombing run, the planes came over us overhead. They're obscured by cloud cover, but there was a roar as 2 or 3 aircraft went by. We haven't had any activity since then. Bob?
With that much time intervening since the last attack, how much activity is there on the streets, can you tell?
All day there's been movement of people around this city. There are soldiers assembling in uniform without weapons, but assembling at bus stations, obviously to be taken somewhere or other. People are in taxis loaded with luggage. The city has been evacuated. People have been evacuating from here for the last couple of days. Taxis have been laden with luggage. There are people walking around with luggage, but there is no panic. Government employees going to and from work. The sun is shining bright. The city mood is calm, but the threat of recurring multinational air attacks is real and will probably continue all day and for as long as President Bush and the multinational force commanders desire it. Bob?
Final question, Peter. Where are you and other CNN crew members in the Al Rashid Hotel right now?
We are in the 9th floor in our own little command center here, reporting to you amongst our equipment. Half of our staff is sleeping. We are all safe. There's been no explosives or any damaging gunfire or any serious threat of casualty or being hurt anywhere near us. The nearest bomb was a mile away. The whole press corps numbered 45 when the attack started. About half of those are attempting to leave Iraq in a convoy that will go to the Jordan border. We have elected to stay for the time being. Bob?
Thank you. CNN correspondent Peter Arnett reporting to us live from the 9th floor of the Al Rashid Hotel, where he's been since war broke out last night at about 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Reporting, Bobby.
Bob, the war in the Gulf is now nearly 14 hours old, and the footage that you'll be looking at momentarily is U.S. aircraft at a Saudi air base that's being fed to us now from the military pool. The war began with coalition jets striking targets throughout Iraq and Kuwait. The U.S. Defense Department characterized the attacks as precision strikes against military targets. Baghdad was heavily hit, but CNN reporters say civilian areas appear to have been spared, as we just heard from Peter Arnett. Iraq claims 14 jets were shot down. The U.S. confirms one was lost. There are reports that Iraqi artillery has hit back at a Saudi oil installation and it is on fire. So far, no major ground fighting has been reported. The opening battle, as expected, has been in the air. CNN's Mark Leff has more.
The first unconfirmed reports of casualties among the Allied forces attacking Iraq and Kuwait came several hours after the first wave of pilots returned to reload. Although some U.S. pilots told reporters everybody who took off came back, Baghdad Radio claims Iraq shot down 14 Allied planes over Iraq and Kuwait. The U.S. Defense Department at first called that claim ridiculous, but later indicated there may have been Allied losses. State broadcasters in both Jordan and Iran reported Iraqi gunners hit one U.S. F-15, whose pilot bailed out into the Persian Gulf. Aircraft from at least 5 countries are reportedly involved in the raids. Britain's defense minister would not confirm reports that one British Tornado fighter bomber crashed after being hit by Iraqi fire.
We don't know. We know that it was an engine fire. It's a perfectly fair question to ask because it may have been one not due to enemy action or it may have been caused by enemy action.
What is over Kuwait or over into...
we're not talking about the actual sphere of operations or what targets it was involved in at this stage.
There was heavy anti-aircraft fire when the air raids began over Baghdad more than 13 hours ago. And there's word from Paris that at least one French pilot may have been slightly injured over Kuwait when Iraqi ground fire hit 4 French Jaguar aircraft going after missiles at a military airfield. The French defense minister says the entire 12-plane squadron did land safely. There have been several reports of Iraqi forces firing across the border into Saudi Arabia, hitting a storage tank at a refinery near Khafji. The British Broadcasting Corporation reported shells fired from Kuwait into Saudi Arabia caused an unknown number of Allied casualties. 8.5 hours after President Bush went on television to announce the attack and to say the world could wait no longer, the president told reporters that things were going well. Mark Leff, CNN, reporting.
There remain large numbers of military questions unanswered concerning what's going on in the Persian Gulf area. Let's join CNN Pentagon correspondent Gene Randall. Gene?
Good morning, Bob. The Pentagon confirms one U.S. plane has been lost in the continuing air war over Iraq and Kuwait. No word on the fate of the pilot or crew. Meanwhile, the U.S. Central Command in Saudi Arabia calls the first phase of the air war very encouraging. But Pentagon officials are quick to point out the war with Iraq is far from over. The message was echoed in London by British Defense Secretary Tom King.
And I would warn people against jumping to early conclusions. This is very early indeed in a very difficult challenge that we face against a country that possesses very considerable armaments, that possesses some very nasty weapons as well. And while we certainly are determined to be effective in carrying through this operation, I wouldn't want people to come to early conclusions on this matter.
About an hour from now, Defense Secretary Dick Cheney and his chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Colin Powell, will be in this room for a briefing, and we will be here too. Gene Randall, CNN Live at the Pentagon.
There have been meetings, no doubt, going on all night at the White House. Frank Sesno is standing by there now. We know that the president will soon be headed for a breakfast meeting. Frank?
Well, Bobby, first of all, apparently that breakfast meeting is underway. It involves Secretary of State Baker and Brent Scowcroft. But before the breakfast meeting, the two of them, plus White House Chief of Staff John Sununu and Deputy National Security Advisor Bob Gates, met with the president. The president, Bobby, has been on the job on and off in the Oval Office from about 5 o'clock this morning. According to White House spokesman Marlin Fitzwater, who shared with us just a few moments ago the president's earliest thoughts, he is pleased at the relative minimization of civilian loss of life and the surgical nature of the bombing strikes, and he is pleased that there has been what he calls minimal casualties among U.S. service personnel. But the White House is not issuing any specifics in terms of casualties among U.S. or allied, or even estimates of casualties among Iraqi forces. Fitzwater says that the president took a short walk by himself around the South grounds with his dogs around 5:10 this morning, and then proceeded to the Oval Office and from there to the Situation Room, where he got an update, collected the overnight written reports of military action, whereupon he returned to the Oval Office to go over those. Later today, the president, at 9:30 this morning Eastern Time, that's a little over an hour from now, will be having the congressional leadership here to the White House, joined by Secretaries Baker and Cheney, to be briefing the congressional leadership. After that, about later in the morning, the president and the cabinet will be going from the White House here to Fort Myer for a religious service there, presided over by the local chaplain and also the Reverend Billy Graham, a friend of President Bush's, who spent the night here at the White House, by the way. The president is a religious man and has consulted religious figures and clergy throughout the final days leading up to the war in the Persian Gulf. There will be a cabinet meeting here at the White House at 3 o'clock this afternoon. That is what is going on here at the White House, a busy place today. Cautious optimism here, but Marlin Fitzwater was asked if this war is over, and he said most emphatically, no. Frank Sesno, CNN, reporting live from the White House.
We have just gotten a report from overseas in which we understand we can expect to see some of the first pictures of damage caused in the war which has broken out between the Allies and Iraq. The report comes from Jeremy Thompson of Britain's ITN.
At the cutting edge of the Allied land force, an American infantry unit dug in almost within sight of the Kuwait border. Their task to probe ahead of the front line as the Liberation Army moved forward. Straddling the main road to occupied Kuwait, they'd set up a checkpoint as a sudden stream of vehicles came towards them fleeing to the south. On the horizon, the reason why. A huge black trail of smoke betraying where incoming Iraqi artillery had struck an oil refinery inside Saudi Arabia. It seemed that everyone from the town of Khafji had decided it was time to leave, including the police and the fire service. Above all, the soldiers were waiting for the possibility of spies. A team from Kilo 33 platoon set off to check the state of the communities the Saudis had left behind. On the outskirts of Khafji, a clear sight of the fire raging in the damaged oil plant. We were now just 6 miles from the Kuwait border. The sergeant and his team stopped to survey the ground ahead. They'd had reports of figures seen on rooftops, possibly enemy artillery spotters helping to guide in the Iraqi shells. Overhead, American helicopters kept a brotherly watch on their comrades below. We're entering the Badlands now, the soldier told his men as they drove through the archway into a deserted town. Khafji had been known as a safe hideout for Iraqi terrorists, but now it appeared no more than a ghost town. 2 hours of Iraqi shelling early this morning had left few obvious marks of damage, but every shop was shut, not a soul was on the street. In the eerie silence, evidence of a panic-stricken evacuation, we came across this car abandoned in the middle of a crossroads. Team Kilo 33 found no sign of hostile forces, though, and no reports of injuries in Khafji. For the moment, the Iraqi artillery has stopped raining down on the deserted town of Khafji. They have had several hits, though the only serious damage is to the oil refinery. What the Iraqis really seem to have achieved is just to drive away the local people. As the oil blaze blackened the border skies, the Allied forces still had not chosen to return fire. Jeremy Thompson, ITN, close to the Kuwaiti border.
We would point out to you at this point that at least one oil industry observer has already said that the attack on the refinery at Khafji does not represent any major setback or blow to either Saudi Arabia's oil production or to the Allied cause. Within the next quarter hour, we expect to bring to you an interview with a ranking member of the Palestine Liberation Organization from Amman, Jordan. That is within the next quarter hour or so. Our coverage continues.
Wherever you do business, the future is approaching at breakneck speed. And the road your business travels is constantly changing. But you can take advantage of change with the world's most comprehensive computing and communication services from EDS. EDS can help you be more competitive by focusing technology on business goals, by creating ways to improve quality and save time, by making everything work together. We can even help you manage it. You can't control change, but you can take advantage of change with EDS.
Most credit cards total your charges and send you a bill. But once a year, the Discover card totals your charges and sends you something in return. It pays to Discover.
As war erupts in the Persian Gulf, the world turns to one source, where the principals check the widening conflict, key figures monitor world reactions, and families look for news of hope. Now, more than ever, shouldn't you be watching CNN?
I have a horrible sinus headache. There's pounding, there's pressure, there's pain.
Today, Linda Clark is trying Tylenol Sinus.
Tylenol Sinus took away the pressure. It took away the pain. It took away the pounding. I like that it's a Tylenol product. I trust that name.
Tylenol Sinus, the strength you need from the name you trust. And now look for new Tylenol Sinus gel caps. Maximum strength, concentrated, and gelatin-coated so they're easy to swallow. Only from Tylenol, the first sinus gel cap.
Within the last hour or so, British Defense Minister Tom King confirmed the fact that the British Air Force had lost one aircraft in the initial airstrike. It was a British Tornado aircraft, and let's take a look at the statistics on that particular aircraft. It is an air defense reconnaissance aircraft. Its maximum speed, 1,452 miles per hour. Maximum range, 1,726 miles. Weapons on board this aircraft, 27-millimeter cannons, radar, homing, and air-to-air missiles. Again, these are the statistics on a British Tornado aircraft, like the one that was brought down today in the initial attack on Iraq. Well, many of the squadrons active in the raids on Iraq are normally based at the big U.S. naval installation in Norfolk, Virginia. CNN's Tom Mintier has a live report now on what life is like there now that the morning after the coalition attack against Iraq.
Bobby, this is a city that has more than 35,000 servicemen serving in the Gulf area. So throughout the night, everyone was waiting and watching with great deal of anticipation the events going on in the Persian Gulf. But this is a city that's also returning to work. Early this morning, construction workers, we saw them getting off a bus and going to the job site just as they normally do every morning. They got off the bus and walked up 20 floors and started moving steel around. It's a city that is prepared for the types of military options that have been used by the president. They realize the dangers involved. They live with it every day. This being a military town, everyone around here has a connection in some way to someone in the military, a brother, a cousin. They all know people, but for the most part, everyone we talk to in this town is supportive of military action.
We should blow him away and get it over with. It's that simple. He waited, gave enough time to do it, you know, talk to his people and went through what we had to do, you know.
I think that, you know, America, you know, doing the best they can. I think Bush is following his job to the best of his extent. That's all, you know.
It's very, very concerning, possibly losing Americans or other nationals. And who needs war? Nobody wants war.
I just have to keep them in God's hands. That's all I can do. Hope that they all come home safely. That's all you can. No other, nothing else you can do. That's right.
The last woman you saw is Patricia Lamb. She has a brother, Mike Lamb. He is in Saudi Arabia somewhere. He was based in Hawaii. He's been in the Marine Corps for 18 years. She says she doesn't know where he is right now, but she says she wants him to know that her prayers are with him. I'm Tom Intier, CNN, reporting live from Norfolk, Virginia.
For an analysis now and some insights on the Allied airstrikes against Iraqi positions overnight, we're being joined by retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Sam Dickens. Colonel Dickens commanded a fighter squadron during the Vietnam War. He joins us from our Washington bureau. Colonel, what can you tell us about what kind of planes, missiles were used, and in what order in the initial attacks last night?
Well, I think that the experience that's been demonstrated by our joint forces in cooperation, when we're talking about United States Air Force and the U.S. Navy, Marine Corps, Army was involved as well as the Saudis, the French, the Kuwaitis, the British. That's an extraordinary professional coordination of combined forces. When we're talking about the weapons that were used, we're talking about suppression of air defense capabilities of the Iraqis. We're talking about Wild Weasel that can intercept, fly down into the radar capabilities for interception, knocking out the SAM-2s, the SAM-3 missiles, because the first thing that you want to do is really suppress any capability to destroy our own aircraft. And of course, we had a cap. We had a fighter aircraft airborne, providing that cap, that coverage that was so necessary for the fighter bombers that had to dedicate all their efforts to destroying their targets. So you've got a well-honed fighting team that knew their targets, had been studying their target folders for an extensive period of time, and just all extraordinary, well-coordinated on the ground before and then by AWACS aircraft. So it's an orchestration that defies the most professional stage management movie to get all this professional working so effectively together. I'm amazed, I would say, if the reports are correct, at how few of our own aircraft have been shot down. I think it's just fabulous, and again, just demonstrates the professionalism of all the forces involved.
We have to interrupt our conversation with you, Colonel Dickens, right now. We have something late. Bobby?
Bob, John Holloman is up and about in Baghdad at this hour and joins us now on the telephone with some new information. John?
Bobby, good morning. I've just taken a tour of Baghdad, not of the whole city. We were allowed to go out on the streets for about 30 minutes, and I was able to tour some specific areas in which there might be some interest around the world. Let me just read my notes that I've kind of scrawled as I drove through the streets. There's been no damage that is visible at President Saddam Hussein's presidential palace. We did see on the outside of the palace that there was some fencing that seemed to be bent, but it doesn't look like damage that would have been caused by what happened here overnight. In crossing the Tigris River towards the United States Embassy, the section of town in which the U.S. Embassy is located, there's no visible damage on the river, on the main bridge that we normally use to get across. But as we crossed the river over to the north side of the Tigris and the west side, we saw more and more signs of anti-aircraft weapons on the roofs of buildings. In the Karada district, which is the district in which the embassy is located, it's near the Tigris River banks, we saw one area of horrendous damage. That's the only way I can describe it. It is obvious from what I saw, and I'll tell you what I saw, and then we can talk about my conclusions, perhaps. At the Iraqi telephone company's main center for getting telephone calls from Baghdad to the outside world, there are a series of satellite dishes and other dishes used for microwave transmissions on the roof of that building, or at least there were. At this moment, those dishes are misshapen. It's almost as if they were melted by what happened. Some of them have holes, obviously apparently from machine gun bullets, and everything on that roof used to send telephone signals out of Baghdad has been destroyed. All the stores in the area around this district, in fact, every shopping area we went to, and we went to about 7 on our tour, all the stores were closed. We saw a fire truck on the street, but no sign of fire in downtown Baghdad. Clumps of soldiers on many street corners. You'd go for maybe 5 blocks and see a clump of 5 or 10 soldiers standing around talking, sitting on the steps, many of them just shaking their heads in amazement. At the U.S. Embassy itself, as we drove by, the Iraqi guard, who's been there every day since we've been here, waved at us and showed a sign of recognition. The embassy itself isn't damaged, but it's certainly empty, and we're told we may not have access to the embassy anymore. One person who we talked to after we passed the embassy, we were talking about U.S.-Iraqi relations, and he said those relations will not be repaired for decades. There's bloodshed between us now. We drove by the building, which is the headquarters for the Iraqi Air Force. There's broken glass all around that building. The National Theater's in the same area. Again, broken glass. One person we saw on the street said that when those F-15 fighters or whatever they were came in last night, all his children were awakened and they were screaming in fear. They were scared to death. We drove by the Baghdad Sheraton Hotel, a place where CNN had its headquarters for a while, months ago. The Sheraton looks okay. It appears it was spared. And the restaurants along the Tigris River. We've done many stories in the days when this crisis was not perhaps so tense, when we could talk to you and show you the nightlife in Baghdad. We showed you the restaurants where crucified fish is served, and all of those restaurants seem to be okay. No damage to them. No damage visible on the river itself. Let's see, on Rashid Street, the place where we have done several reports talking to the people of Baghdad and the area where President Saddam Hussein walked the streets just recently with Kenneth Kaunda, the president of Zambia, the other night. There's glass all over those streets, and we saw one huge building, again, a telephone company building, where up at the roof area of the building, a huge chunk of concrete and reinforced steel bars had just been ripped off the side of the building. And there were some houses next door to that building, some brick houses, where we're told people were living last night, and those houses have been turned into piles of rubble today. That's about the report I can offer you from my trip on the streets. Bobby, Peter Arnett has gone out now to take a look before the sun goes down here. There's about another hour of sunlight before, well, we can't imagine what might happen at night tonight in Baghdad, but all of us are fearful. Bobby?
John, this may be a tough question, but is it likely that Hussein has moved his military and governmental functions out of Baghdad at this point?
No way to tell. As you know, we have not seen President Saddam Hussein on television in a live picture or in person for days. And this morning, our engineer, Nick Robertson, was at the TV station preparing to attempt to feed some pictures from CNN to you. And it turned out because of all that damage that I described to you in the communications building, he was unable to make a feed. But President Saddam Hussein walked into the building while he was there. And so Nick may well be the only Westerner to have seen President Saddam Hussein today. And he said that the president looked resolute, looked determined when he walked in. Today was not a day to stick out your hand and shake the hand of the president of Iraq. I imagine Nick didn't do that. He just stood and observed. But we don't know. The presidential palace, as I say, still seems intact from what we can see from outside. Anti-aircraft guns above all of the huge gates of the presidential palace right now.
John, what kind of restrictions are you all under now that you're venturing out into the streets?
We cannot take a television camera with us, Bobby. That's for a broadcast journalist, a TV news reporter, that is the most horrible restriction there is. And in fact, until just very recently, they wouldn't let us go out on the streets at all. We were able to go through a special relationship we have with somebody here, and that's how we got to come back and report these things to you. But it's going to be very difficult for us to show you any pictures other than the pictures we take from the windows of our hotel, it appears, for the near future. We've been trying all day to make contact with an Iraqi government official to get the Iraqi government, to speak with us live here on CNN. We think maybe in the next couple of hours we'll be able to do that, but I don't want to promise that to you or our viewers. We're attempting to work that out, and there is an official who speaks very good English who will probably be in the vicinity of our hotel in the next few hours, and we'll try to bring him to this microphone and let him share his thoughts and impressions with our viewers.
All right, John Holloman reporting live from Baghdad. Take care of yourself. And when our coverage of the war in the Gulf continues, we'll be back with an interview with Senator Sam Nunn and also with a member of the PLO Executive Committee in Amman, Jordan. Stay with us.
With so many pet foods to choose from, which one do you trust to keep your pet healthy? Listen to the following message, and I'll be back with an important free offer.
A lot of pet foods promise good health, but just one has the unsurpassed nutrition, quality ingredients, and proven performance that is recommended by veterinarians for good health above all the rest. Hill's Science Diet. Science Diet is recommended by veterinarians 3-to-1 over any other brand, and fed by most veterinarians to their own pets. Science Diet, because the first choice of veterinarians should be your choice, too.
I'd I'd like to send you a free sample of the food veterinarians recommend 3 to 1 over any other. Science Diet. Call 1-800-482-3800 and receive this free sample pack with canine or feline formula. Science Diet. Because the first choice of veterinarians is my choice. And it should be your choice, too.
This is CNN.
The situation in Baghdad continues to evolve. Let's rejoin CNN correspondent John Holloman. John?
I'm going to tell our viewers, in case you happen to be broadcasting us live now, that is the most horrifying sound you can hear in Baghdad. That was the first sound we heard last night after the sun went down before all hell broke loose in this Iraqi capital. I'm going to turn off my microphone and listen to you, Atlanta, to see if you were able to hear that.
John, were you talking to me? We did hear that very clearly. And it was...
Yes, Bob. Stand by just a moment. I'm getting a message here. All right. This is the second time we've heard the siren. I did not hear the earlier one about 30 minutes ago, Bob. Wait a minute. Iraqi television news has just come on. We'll talk about that in a minute, Bob. But first, I wanted you to hear that siren as we heard it. The last time that I heard a siren like that, it was at about 3 o'clock in the morning, Baghdad time, when the coalition-led attack began, and I just froze in my tracks when I did hear that sound. I don't see any signs that the siren was done for anything other than a test at this moment. I don't see anything on the horizon except a beautiful sunset about to develop. I don't see any signs of any airplanes coming in. I don't see any anti-aircraft fire. I probably interrupted you needlessly, Bob Kane. I'm sorry to have done that. On Iraqi television right now, we're seeing pictures of President Saddam Hussein. I don't think there's any way for you to see those pictures. If there is, we're going to record them here in Baghdad, and we'll get them to you and try to find out what the president has said in this televised address as soon as we can. But at this moment, we cannot even hear what he's saying.
CNN correspondent John Holloman reporting to us live from Baghdad. We could point out briefly the military view that one of the reasons for not seeing planes, even if the raid warning is real, is that the planes often fly too high to be seen. There's also the factor that sometimes the attack might be from missiles, and thus, of course, also would not be seen. CNN correspondent Reed Collins is joining us live from Washington for a conversation with one of this country's most knowledgeable military experts. Good morning, Reed.
Good morning, Bob. We have with us Senator Sam Nunn, the Democratic chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. You got a little bit of early information, I believe, from Secretary of Defense Cheney, didn't you, sir?
Secretary Cheney and I talked early this morning, and he felt the operation had gone extremely well. But he also cautioned that it's not over. It's continuing. We still have some continuing challenges and dangers out there, but in my view, we have achieved our initial strategic goals. One was to protect Israel and, of course, the cities of Saudi Arabia from the Scud missiles that could have had chemicals on them. That was important, of course, from a humanitarian point of view, but also from the point of view of not letting the coalition come apart because of Israel's involvement. So the relationship between the United States and Israel has been crucial here, and I would say that it's been handled extremely well. The other strategic goal was, of course, to control the air, because if we can control the air, and I think we are pretty much in control of the air now, then I think it's just a question of time in terms of being able to destroy an awful lot of the ground assets.
Some of the returning F-15 pilots said they saw, even in the nighttime, and Iraqi pilots don't like to night fly, some planes in the air, but they were going north. They weren't coming down to meet them, and the U.S. pilot suggested that was a good idea. What do you suppose we can say about the situation now? We're in late daylight over Baghdad. Is it possible that air superiority can be declared achieved?
It's very close. I don't believe we've destroyed all their aircraft. They have a lot of aircraft in very well-protected shelters, some of them underground shelters. But they obviously didn't use their aircraft. And aircraft that aren't used in the initial stages, you have to ask what are they going to use them for and when they're going to use them, and it doesn't make much sense to me. But nevertheless, they did not use a lot of their aircraft. We've destroyed a number of them, I'm sure. We've destroyed a lot of airfields, and I think we're close to having air superiority. But we still have some dangers. They could put up some aircraft, and they could even go on kamikaze-type missions. You never know about that. You have to be prepared for it. We have the danger of, although we think we've got most of the fixed-site Scud missiles, they could have some Scud missiles hidden. They're mobile, and they could have them hidden. And, of course, we've got the danger of the artillery. That's sort of the ultimate danger when we have to use ground forces.
Ground forces, is this going ultimately to be a ground grinded-up war?
I hope not. We've got great ground forces out there, and they're ready to do their job. And they're already doing a lot. They're serving very well, and they're helping fix the enemy. They're, by maneuvering, I'm sure, they're helping channel the Iraqis into positions where we can hit them. But that would be very expensive and very, in terms of human life, I hope we can avoid it. The air power is overwhelming. We've never seen anything like this. This is a new era in the air battle, and we're doing extremely well. I hope that we will have, although you certainly can't predict it now, a psychological collapse on the other side. It can't be predicted, but we can hope and pray that happens.
Is this what we're waging, really, a psychological war as well as a technological one?
Well, anytime you have this kind of overwhelming technological advantage, and you have the pilots and the training we have, and you have, for instance, cruise missiles, and they've done extremely well with cruise missiles, electronic warfare, jamming the radar, confusing the SAM missiles when they shoot at our aircraft, we must have done that extremely well. When you have that kind of advantage, it's bound to have a big effect on the psychology of the adversary. I think every now and then we ought to praise our defense industry out there. They get a lot of knocks, but they've developed a tremendous amount of technology that is saving precious American lives.
All right. Let's go. We have to go back now to Bob Kane. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Bob.
Reed, Iraqi President Saddam Hussein is on Iraqi television. We don't have pictures, but we can hear what he is saying. Let's listen.
The oppressors and the suppressors of peoples and nations everywhere. God, make the fires of war a cool breeze for Iraqi holy warriors. God is great, God is great, God is great.
And that was through the voice of a translator, apparently.
Victory is great, and those who have attacked us will lose. President Saddam Hussein has visited the command center of the Air Force and the Air Defense Force, and he met a number of staff officers and was impressed by the high morale of our great pilots, our Eagles.
What we just said to you was President Saddam Hussein on Iraqi television making a statement to the people. We believe it was recorded about 4 hours ago at the Iraqi television headquarters. John Holloman, CNN Live in Baghdad.
The substance of what we just heard, John, showed no sign whatsoever of any intimidation or any backing down on the part of the Iraqis. Was that your reading? We did not hear the whole thing. John Holloman, do you hear me? If you do, John, how did you assess what you heard the Iraqi leader saying? John Holloman is apparently not able to hear us at the moment, but what we heard from the Iraqi translator, President Hussein. John, do you hear me now?
Bob. Yeah, Bob. What happened was right as I was talking to you, all the electricity went off at our hotel. We're getting electricity by generator, and the generator just shut down. We can, as you can hear, operate our equipment with batteries, and we just didn't have a battery nearby. We've got one now, and we'll keep a spare here. But anyway, go ahead, Bob.
I was asking, John, and telling you, first of all, that we did not hear that much of President Hussein's speech through the translator, but what we heard showed us no sign of any intimidation on his part or of any sense that he may be backing down, in any way frightened by what has happened overnight. Was that your reading?
Well, I didn't understand a word that the president said, Bob. I looked at his face. I watched his eyes as he spoke, and he looked serious. He looked somewhat sad. He spoke for only about 5 minutes, so you'll know. As we're speaking, I'm hearing some explosions, it sounds like, off in the distance, just to let you know, in case we should go away suddenly. All right, stand by, Bob. I'm going to go to the window. We have anti-aircraft fire here now. Nope, this is incoming. I'll let you hear it as it happens. I'll just go to the window. It's daylight, Bob, so if there are American planes visible in the sky, I ought to be able to see them, American or U.S. planes. The skies are filled with birds. And yes, I see some contrails from jets. The contrails appeared instantly in the sky, maybe 200 yards of contrail just out of nowhere. The planes that are flying over, apparently from the coalition that are drawing this anti-aircraft fire from Iraq, are flying so rapidly that I mean, they're invisible. I mean, they come over and you can't see them. And then Peter Arnett has just joined me. Peter's, I think, eating some peanut butter. Swallow, Peter. This contrail that you see here, Peter, is about 200 yards long. It just appeared instantly.
Yeah, well, that's the speed of these aircraft. I think it's interesting, John, that after 13 or 14 hours of suppressive fire, the U.S. and multinational planes coming over Baghdad are still facing enormous anti-aircraft fire. The Pentagon has confirmed that one plane was apparently shot down, while there's still a lot of resistance from ground defenses here in Baghdad. John?
All right, Peter. It sounds like thunder, but obviously there's no rain in the forecast of water, at least. As we look out the window, the sun is beginning to sink in the sky, and it's a beautiful sunset. It's red, yellow, and orange. And as we look out the window, we can still hear some anti-aircraft fire from various locations around us. We can hear this thunder of what apparently is some bombs coming out of these airplanes that are flying over, but we can't really see much sign of that. Okay, let's see. We've lost electricity now here in the building, Peter. We're on batteries, but Atlanta can hear us.
Yes, I've been finding that officials we've been dealing with are asking us a lot of questions about what's going on. They haven't been informed very well, so it seems they're asking about details of the engagement, about the extent of the engagement, about what's happening to their own forces as the information presented from the Pentagon, from Britain, from other sources. On the horizon to the south, we see smoke rising, it looks like, from another oil refinery. There are towers in the distance. John?
All right, Peter, I can hear this raging sound outside the window. You can probably hear it, too. We assume it is the coalition jets flying over our location, or flying over an area where we are. I'm seeing anti-aircraft fire now from the area of Baghdad's small downtown airport. And, you can hear the reports as I can. Very noisy outside, Bob. I'm going to get a little lower and crouch down here behind my hotel balcony. I see more anti-aircraft fire coming. The fire is pointing toward the south. You can see the bullets going out off toward the south as these anti-aircraft gunners here in Baghdad try to engage the airplanes that are overhead. There's no sign that that's been too successful. Peter, you can talk, and then maybe we can do like a left to right for our viewers, showing them what we can see.
By all means, John, this is to my count, 15th, 16th, 17th raid on Baghdad since the first one at 2:30 today. They've been coming in waves.
Come on, let's go across the hall. We have some new pictures. Hold it. Stand by, Bob. We have a long extension cord, and we're trying to take it to another side of the hotel where there's even Nick.
John, do you hear me?
Nick Robertson, our engineer. There's a potential that there's been some sort of missile attack here. We don't want to report things that we don't know. But Peter, you untangle the extension cord or go to the window. Your choice. There's definitely something going on outside now. On the east side of our location in Baghdad. As we look out the window, we still see some birds outside. We see an anti-aircraft battery on a nearby building. Peter, I'm moving too fast. I should conserve my energy at this moment. Peter Arnett.
John Holloman is trying to see every bomb that falls for the benefit of our viewers. Of course, we can't see very little, actually, of what's going on because we're on the ninth floor of a hotel. Our vision is limited to basically northeast, southwest. But we can hear a lot, and we do see anti-aircraft going into the air. This raid has been going about 7 or 8 minutes now. The duration of most of these raids is 15 to 20 minutes. John?
Okay, Peter, off on the horizon, probably 5 miles away from downtown Baghdad, I just saw a puff of black smoke near some television antennas. And as you can continue to hear the noise in the background, Sleeping Beauty Bernard Shaw once again rousted from his bed.
What are you doing awake? You know, the most frightening thing about this kind of attack bombing, John Holloman, is that you cannot see a damn thing. You cannot see anything.
I'm going to tell you something, Bernie. I was looking out the western window of our bureau here a few minutes ago. We heard the sirens. We heard the anti-aircraft. I looked up, and instantly, as if, in a second, in a blink, there was a contrail from one of the, apparently from one of the coalition jets that appeared. It was 200 yards long, and it just whooped like that. There it was.
Precisely. And by the time the warplanes come in and they drop their payload, they're gone, and then you have the effort to try to attack them. Peter?
Yes, well, it's been said all day that the U.S. multinational forces control the skies over Baghdad, and I guess elsewhere in Iraq and Kuwait, that it's also been said that maybe Saddam Hussein's military has got weaponry hidden out of sight, have not revealed it. We saw this time what could have been 2 surface-to-air missiles fired into the sky. Maybe he is concealing some heavy stuff that he'll use, that the military will use when as this war progresses.
And what that means, if Saddam Hussein does have military hardware that he has managed to hide from the Allied forces, what that means is that we here at Ground Zero in Baghdad are going to be subjected to this repeated bombing, these repeated bombing attacks, these waves of warplanes coming in over and around Baghdad until the Allied forces feel that they have isolated and annihilated the targets on the ground. And I'll tell you, I was just sleeping a moment ago, and when I heard what I heard, believe me, I wish to hell that I had not been here at Ground Zero.
Well, we all wish that, Bernie, but we are here in Ground Zero. I think a point to make to our viewers is that Baghdad is not a city in ruins. I've been saying that all day. The targets that the Pentagon is selecting seem to be military, government, strategic targets, command and control. Right in front of me, looking out the hotel, the back window, there are workers going to a small plant. People are in the streets. All of the buildings I'm looking at, and I'm looking at several hundred, are standing. They are not damaged. The targets that are being chosen, like the Defense Ministry, which was destroyed this morning, the Telecommunications Center, oil refineries, we haven't yet learned of any civilian casualties. We've asked officials constantly all day. They haven't been revealed to us. So Baghdad still stands, as I repeat, it is not a city in ruins or getting that way.
Bernie, I just came back from the street, so you'll know. I went over to the area where the U.S. Embassy was, and as I was driving there, I discovered some of these targets. And you know what we were talking about in the midst of this, that perhaps these attacks were very precise, seemed to be true. For example, the main telecommunications center called the PTT here in Iraq, it had been hit heavily. All the satellite dishes and the microwave transmission dishes on the roof had melted. I mean, these are huge 30-foot wide pieces of metal that had just sort of melted and crumpled together.
Tell me, John, has CNN been able to get pictures out to the world?
Nope, we have not. While you slept, we've continued to work with the Iraqi authorities.
I haven't done much sleeping, by the way, my brother. I haven't done much sleeping.
I'm sure that's true, Bernie. This is not a good place to sleep, not an easy place to sleep. But what we're trying to do is some other means of getting pictures out, which we don't want to talk about at the moment, but we're going to try in the next little while to provide our viewers at least with some pictures from Baghdad.
Just a thought for our viewers and our families. When these air raids come in, the hotel we're in goes into a state of alert. They turn off the power. All of the staff and many of the guests go to the shelter, go to the bunkers downstairs. We are in alert status. We haven't had water all day, but we've had power between these raids. So but this building has not been hit. Obviously, it is not being targeted, but we are in a preparatory situation here, and we do go into an alert status, or the hotel does, whenever these airplanes come over.
Not to be facetious, what you're really saying is there's no room service.
Exactly right. There's no service of any kind. Although, about 4 hours ago, a maid knocked on my door to make up my bed, and I was lying in it at the time.
Before you go,
yes, sure, Bernie.
Go away. Before you go away, I just want to buttress what you and Peter have been observing. Believe me, if this were not, and I say this very seriously, if this were not surgical bombing, our viewers would not hear your voice, Peter's voice, or my voice. If this were indiscriminate bombing, believe me, the world would have no idea of what's going on here until the Allied forces gave their version of it.
Exactly, Bernie. You know, that's one of the interesting points of all this. In covering a war, which I have not done until yesterday, I've always been told that you're constantly under scrutiny of various government officials, and Iraqi government officials certainly tried to keep us from talking to you last night. They said it was for our own safety. They were trying to take us away from our vantage point to a shelter that's underground. But The fact is that in order to get these sounds to you now on this microphone, the government of Iraq and the government of the United States have to both be cooperating. Because if anybody wanted to pull the plug, it would be not that difficult for them to do.
And, John, as I said to you a couple hours ago, ask yourself this question, wherever you are in the world, ask yourself this question. Why? Why is CNN able to get out these kinds of reports? All right. Just think about that for a moment. The other observation is, if this is happening during the day, we know what we went through last night, gentlemen. If this is happening during the day, and if the Allied forces feel that there are still some places, some viable targets, some targets that are threatening their aerial control here in Baghdad and around Baghdad, what are we going to go through tonight?
Well, that's certainly a big question.
Well, we'll never know until it happens, Bernie, but I'd like to point out that what we are seeing is a tiny little prism of the battle, where in Baghdad it is the capital, that there is similar activity, probably greater, all over Iraq and in Kuwait. So we are giving you really only the few planes we see. Beyond this city, there is an enormous air bombardment. There are enormous casualties being taken, but we're giving you only what we can see.
I still come back to the men and women of Iraq who are part of this nation's armed services, who had the misfortune to be at their duty stations wherever these bombs and these rockets fell during this confrontation over the past few hours, going into the night, and who will have the misfortune of being wherever they are when these weapons, modern-day warfare, fall upon them during this confrontation. I cannot get away from, Peter Arnett, John Holloman, I cannot get away from the human factor. And I'm thinking about the relatives of the pilots who are involved in this whole operation. There is a human factor here that should not be forgotten. We're not talking about machines. It takes human beings to operate these machines. And one of the reasons why I have not been able to get to sleep, I've been awake for, I don't know, it must feel like 40 hours. I think it's going on 40 hours. One of the things I cannot get out of my mind is the fact that behind all this are human beings.
Yes, human beings, and human beings the target, Bernie. Just one last reflection from me before we go back to Atlanta. There is one other people that I saw who were able to cope, as we can see, cope with the bombardments and adversity as the Iraqi people are doing it. And it was in Hanoi when I was there in 1972, when it was also Allied bombing. I found the North Vietnamese did adapt to this kind of pressure. And now the Iraqis have had 8 years to adapt. They are walking around the streets as we look out now, just a few minutes after the raid, and it'll remain to be seen, of course, how long this solid view and how long this ability to cope is going to last in the face of what will be obviously an increasing pressure from the multinational forces on Baghdad, the rest of Iraq, and Kuwait, Bernie.
Peter Arnett, I only think of a little boy I once heard who said, "This is not the way it's supposed to be."
Okay, gentlemen, we got to go back to Atlanta now for more news. John Holloman for Bernie and Peter in Baghdad.
John Holloman, Peter Arnett, and Bernard Shaw. It is 5 minutes till 5 your time in Baghdad. Please try to get some rest and take care of yourselves. And our coverage continues in a moment.
Hello. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm having a dinner party and I've run out of coffee.
Come in.
Thank you.
Just a minute. Would Taster's Choice be too good for your guests?
Oh, I think they could get used to it.
It's a very sophisticated coffee.
They have very sophisticated taste.
Do they?
Yes. Well, I must be getting back.
Savor the sophisticated taste of Taster's Choice.
So have you met your new neighbor yet? Oh, I've popped in for coffee.
Wherever your business takes you, the Gulfstream 4 can take you there. The Gulfstream 4 can take you nearly 5,000 statute miles non-stop, equaling or exceeding airline timetables. Or it can take you to several locations in a single day, optimizing your time and energies. No other business aircraft gives you global access with such uncompromised timeliness, convenience, and security.
Performance, endurance, elegance. What more can anyone ask of a luxury car?
Quite a bit, actually.
As the war in the Gulf continues, CNN is the network for the most complete coverage from the Middle East and throughout the world. Now, more than ever, shouldn't you be watching the network viewers voted best in coverage of the crisis in the Gulf? CNN.
Our coverage of the war in the Gulf continues now, and the hostilities of the last 13 hours have had a huge effect on the financial markets. Oil prices are beginning to move. Stuart Varney joins us now from the business desk in New York. Stuart, good morning.
And good morning to you, Bobby. Markets around the world reacting very sharply on the apparent success so far of Operation Desert Storm. London oil traders looking at the biggest one-day price drop in history. That's because there's been no damage so far to Saudi oil facilities. That had been a market concern. At the moment in London, a barrel of Britain's North Sea crude is down $7.40 compared to the Houston close. The British benchmark selling for $21.60 a barrel. Long-term interest rates plunging this morning. The Treasury's key 30-year bond is now up 2 24/32. The yield all the way down to 8.16. Precious metals prices falling very sharply. Gold down more than $24 an ounce, back to $378.50. And the dollar's going south as well. At this moment, it's down more than 3 yen against the Japanese currency, down 2.5 pfennigs against the German mark. International stock markets rallying. In Tokyo, the Nikkei average closed up 1,004 points. That's 4.5%. In London, the FT100 is up 64 points now at 21.19. Shares at the Paris Bourse up 8%. That market registering its largest percentage gain on record immediately after Allied troops began battle. In Frankfurt, the German DAX index closed with a gain of 7%. U.S. stocks have already begun to trade in London, and most of the blue chips are up sharply. Traders there expect the Dow to open here between 50 and 75 points higher. That's when Wall Street opens later on this morning. That's the latest in business. Another report in 1 hour, including the opening numbers from Wall Street. I'm Stuart Varney at the Business News Desk in New York. Defense Secretary Dick Cheney after this.
Day after day, night after night, there's an easy way to save on AT&T long distance. And all it takes to get started is one simple phone call. Just call 1-800-874-4300 for the AT&T Reach Out America plan. Reach Out America gives you an additional 25% discount starting at 5 p.m. So you'll get the biggest discount during the best time to call. But that's just the beginning. The AT&T Reach Out America plan also gives you a 10% daytime discount. Great. Plus an hour of weekend and night calls, so you can call all across America for one low price.
Oh, my assistant just brought me a copy of the budget.
To order the AT&T Reach Out America plan, call 1-800-874-4300. You'll get a 25% discount off our already low prices from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. An hour of weekend and night calls, plus our daytime discount. It all adds up to savings 24 hours a day.
Hi, Grandma. Yes, I'm fine, and so is Harry.
And it costs just $8.70 a month. Order the AT&T Reach Out America plan now and see how easy it is to save on AT&T long distance 24 hours a day. To order, call 1-800-874-4300.